All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to another episode of JSquared, the question and answers, where you've got questions and we've got answers. I'm Justin Carpenter.
I'm Jenna McClelland.
Yeah, and we're not claiming to have all the answers, but we've certainly learned a few things along the way, or perhaps even unlearned many things along the way. And so we're happy to share what we have. And yeah, we really appreciate people who have submitted the questions. So these shows are centered around this group, and our focus is really centered around really dissolving the false illusory self, the identities that we've formed, imposed onto us by the external circumstances that we've been placed into and what we've adopted, taken on. How can we dissolve these false identities, come back to our true essence? And from that platform, from that foundation, how can we call in our divine partner? How can we call in our divine lover? And so whether we're in a relationship, aspiring to be in one, or just content with the solo journey, either which way, this is a great space to talk about all of these things. So I'm excited to dive in today. So
yeah, I second everything you just said. Really happy to be here. And these were really good questions. And so I'm really excited about diving in because we're going to be going pretty deep today.
Yeah. So let's not waste any time and just get right into it. So the first question was submitted by Rebecca Maria. And she said, I'm 63, still very active and fit, and I do get quite a bit of male attention, usually from much younger men. However, I have no desire to be with anyone on an intimate level. I have a full life and many wonderful friends of all different cultures, religions, and traditions, many of which tell me frequently that I'm too young to be on my own. I struggle with feeling I'm avoiding intimacy as I've been deeply let down by partners, although I'm very aware that it was a dynamic between us and I wasn't exactly easy either, she says. And also the fact that after menopause, I don't feel sexually attracted to anyone, which in some ways is a relief as I have time to do as I please. Is it avoidance, or is it simply a choice I've made to be single? Do we only really discover ourselves when we are in partnership with another to reflect back to us, or can we do that with friends?
Yeah, so I'll tackle this one first. I can feel the dichotomy happening between the mind and the heart with Rebecca's question. And in order for us to fully align with our destiny and our highest timeline, we first have to create clarity. And so one way in which we can create clarity is to truly understand the difference between truth and fact. One thing that we hear often is, my mind is saying this, but my heart is leading me this way, right? Like there's this tug of war that can happen. So when we understand that, or rather the highest form of honesty is the truth that we're willing to tell ourselves. And what is the truth? The truth is what lives in your heart. The truth is what you really, truly want and what you deeply desire. Because a lot of us, what we're doing is when we're asked what the truth is, we're going from a mind perspective and thinking more from the victim, thinking more, well, I don't want this. I want my partner to do, to be disrespectful, or I don't want my boss to tell me or to micromanage me, right? So the issue is we tend to listen so much to the things that we don't want that we're betraying the truth that truly lives within our heart. And when we can say, I want freedom, right now in this portion, this part of my life, I want to be single. I want to be free. I want to experience what it's like to cultivate a type of self-love that's going to lead me in this beautiful phase of my life. If we are thinking too much about facts, the facts are going to, they're going to be complaints. They're going to be all the things that you don't want. They're going to be the systematic types of things like, oh, well, you're at this age. might as well do this, or is kind of that narrative, how we can get stuck into the hamster wheel of the matrix and the system. So when we are led with the clarity of our heart, we can be pulled into the direction of freedom. And where there's freedom, the path will pave itself beautifully, because you're aligning to your highest truth. You're aligning to your highest timeline. So you start to receive revelations, inspiration, intuition, and then you get these hints, and all of a sudden you go somewhere and the universe is going to start playing back with you by serendipities, by miracles, by meaningful coincidences. You just happen to be at the right place at the right time. So when we can truly be honest with ourselves, not, oh, it is my truth that I don't want, to be disrespected. No, I want integrity. I want depth. I want honesty, right? So when you can feel into those energies and how much more stable they are and concrete and the true level of really knowing what we deserve and what we want to have, it will lead you into a much richer space. So that is, from my perspective, kind of how I really was laying out, because we get the mind, the heart, but your heart is always going to lead you to that truth.
Absolutely. And posed by external points of view. Everyone's got opinions, and so we're just going to allow our truth to be bombarded or diminished by the facts or by the opinions of others. She talks about her friend saying that she should be with somebody. Then that's going to dilute our ability to tap into what do we really want? What is my heart leading me to this moment? So to answer your question, it's not necessarily to say it's wrong or right to be in a relationship or you need that to have any experience in life. It's really to step into what you really want. What is your highest calling in this moment? But it's important to also recognize that it's just for this moment. So a lot of the ideas around what do I want can have a timeline of like, oh, do I want to be single for the rest of my life or all of that? How about just right now? Do I want to be with a partner right now? And if the answer to that is no, and that's true, and I'm really sitting with that, then that's great. Then truly be with that. Don't play with the dichotomy of going back and forth and thinking, doubting yourself because somebody else told you this, or you're thinking of some timeline that's constructed by the mind. All of that getting away from the heart, which is right here, right now. Yeah. So, and then another part of the question is or did you have something you wanted to ask that? So another part of the question I wanted to mention was the layer around struggle with feeling I'm avoiding intimacy as I've been deeply let down by partners. So this idea that, maybe your want is being tarnished by some other circumstances or some trauma identity. And while that may be possible, it's important to really release the idea that might be happening and truly just get clear on what do I want right now. Because when you do, just like Jenna said, you're going to have the revelations, the inspirations, the intuitions to gain clarity on what the next steps are going to be needed to, if those trauma identities do exist, to dissolve them. So all of that can come into play when we come back to our true essence and come back to our true self. Hopefully the noise isn't too loud. I think it should be pretty okay.
You want me to twirl it? Why don't you tell everyone an interesting fact about yourself and I'll twirl it?
Yes, that's what I would say as far as this question goes. And it's a fantastic question because there's no end all be all, we have to be in a relationship in order to spiritually evolve or to come into ourselves. It really is something that some people, because when we get clear on like our soul contract and what we come here to do, there are people who maybe have signed up to say, I'm not here to be with somebody romantically, or this is not a part of my chapter in this time. But if our ability to tap into where is our soul, where is our highest alignment really guiding me, where is my heart calling me in this moment, I'm always going to be swayed by everything else around me. So yeah, great question. So the next one was from Chris, and she asked, do you or does anyone have any information describing what the definition or meaning of true sacred sex is? I think I'm totally upside down on this, and I really want to truly understand what is meant by the term sacred sex. I know we were told that for our entire lives we bastardized sex, and that it was never meant to be what it is today. So I'm trying to wrap my head around what is the true intention of sex other than procreation. A lot of my confusion has to do with the male ejaculation and having it go upwards, not outwards, and all of that. I hope it makes sense. I didn't want to be too graphic. I just have been struggling with this for years since I first learned the term sacred sex. Thanks in advance. Yeah, fantastic question. And it is something that, I've certainly come into deeper levels of realization in my process with it. So I recognize the confusion around it. And I think it's important to just really get simple, really bring it back to, let's define what is sacred and how can something be sacred. So if you have this kind of comes into, we've mentioned in other episodes on the great inversion, on this idea that matter precedes energy, but that's the illusion, that's the inversion. It's actually energy precedes matter. So energy comes first. So what makes something sacred is the energy placed into it. It's that us as these energetic beings having our divine intent placed into an object or an act or any of that, that's what causes that to be sacred. So a temple is not in and of itself sacred. It's all of the chanting and the prayers and the beings who have filled that space and filled it with the beautiful energy. That's what makes it sacred. Jesus's garment was not sacred just because he picked the right color or, any of that kind of thing. It was sacred because of the energy he imbued into it. So the same thing applies when we're talking about sacred sex, that the union between, it's about the sacredity that's placed into the act itself. So if we're going to look at the specifics behind sacred sex, it really comes to am I using this act as a form of self-gratification selfishly? Am I using it just to get off or just to release some chemicals in my brain, and I'm using somebody else's body to get that? And that's what the pornographic culture has conditioned us into viewing this act to be a part of. There's no sacredity to that. There's no union to that. There's no magic imbued to it. There's no connection. There's only disconnection because you're just viewing somebody else to be something to use. So what makes the sexual act sacred is when it is used as a form, a deeper layer of connection between myself and my partner. So I'm not focused solely on my own gratification, my own pleasure. I'm truly focused on theirs. I'm truly focused on the act of connecting in that moment. And through that, that's where the union really forms. That's where the X really forms. So if my focus, my intent is on their pleasure and their focus is on mine, and we're coming into this in a selfless way, then that's what allows the magic to form, and this to become a much more sacred act and a much more connecting way of being. So that's sort of generally what is sacred sex. And we can go deeper, likely not in this space. This would be something that would be more reserved for more intimate containers where we can talk more openly about these kind of practices and ways to channel energy in this kind of way and how this kind of looks in the bedroom and all of that kind of stuff. But generally, this is the fundamental basis of what makes sacred sex sacred. So it doesn't necessarily have to do with male ejaculation, whether you do this or not. This is, again, speaking from ignorance before of not really knowing that there's so much more to this than just the male ejaculation. Now, the male ejaculation can be paired a lot with the sort of primal where I'm just using another partner for that act, and that can come from masturbation and things of that nature. But the ejaculation itself is not the problem. And there's actually ways that you can stimulate and move that energy in ways where there's still ejaculation that does occur, without it being a loss of energy in that kind of way. But that's a deeper layer that I'd love to get into in a more intimate container. So yeah, I think I'll just pass it over and see if you have any more to add on to that.
Yeah, totally. Everything becomes sacred when it is from the energy of a selfless act. So you can look at the contrast between the ego and selflessness, right? So we can use our body or our frequency, and we can infuse objects, spaces, things, and acts with sacredness due to the selfishness that we have in that moment. So when it's coming to making this connection of this meeting point that Justin was talking about, do you mind like facing me for a minute? So normally when we're having sex, I might just like stand for a minute. We're thinking third eye, and it's this energy portal that's moving down to our genitalia. And so it's self-serving. So the energy is not being pushed into the energy field of your partner. So this is going to be that ego. This is not a sacred act because it's self-serving, right? When he's coming in with that connection as well, disconnection. That's why a lot of people after sex can feel really tired. They can feel fatigued. They don't have anything to back on. There's really none of that beauty that can be cultivated, because love making is creation. Making is create something. So in order to create that essential from each individual, from their third eye, when we're having sex, we're thinking third eye from me, and then my energy point directed towards Justin's genitalia. That way I can hold selfless space for him to be receiving as much pleasure from this experience as possible while he is holding the same intention. This meeting central point is where sex magic essentially can be established. You can pull two intentions, a prayer together, really come into that lovemaking, come into that creation, because otherwise, again, it's a selfless act. So we all can have sacred, we all are sacred, but it's just understanding that as simply as possible, just to be able to share this with a kindergartner, right? Is I can infuse this energy into what I am currently doing. Therefore, I can walk into a forest that wasn't sacred, but because I walked in with that selflessness within me and wanting to give something back into the forest, it immediately can become sacred, which is obviously very healing. The ego can also demolish and distort any object, space, or thing or act that was sacred. What allows sacredness to be passed on to another is openness. Openness is going to be the portal in which you can transfuse and transfer sacredness, so we can continuously pass this on from clothings, from intentions, just however it is that you want to. Maybe you have a gift, a birthday gift or something that you want to give selflessly. That gift can now be something sacred, and they can also take it with openness and they can pass it down. That's why like there's rocks or artifacts and the things that maintain the sacredness, energy, and vibration because of the openness that's available within those spaces.
Yeah, well said.
Thank you.
So just to sort of conclude on that and talking about the sort of popular ideas of things like semen retention and those layers. So while there are, it's like with anything, there can be an extreme. And the extremities is never where the truth lies. The truth is always right in the middle. That's why Jesus taught the middle path, the middle way. And this also applies with semen retention. So there are certainly benefits to not continuously spilling your seed and expending it in that kind of way, especially if it's done in that sort of selfish way of constant release in that kind of capacity. And the flip side, if it's always retained, there's harm to that as well. And I'd love to just share a personal sort of intimate story in regards to that. Having been celibate for 5 years before I met Jenna, there were many times, there were many months where I was very much on board with this idea that, oh, you can never release your semen, you can never have that. If you do, it's draining your life force and it's going to be horrible for you. So what would end up happening is I would go for months and months at a time without doing that, and I would have nocturnal releases. I would have that where my body would eventually become so full of this that it would force itself out. So my point in bringing this up is that there is a time where your body says, hey, we need to release this. There's too much energy built up in this way. And just like when you have to go to the bathroom, nature says, hey, it's time to go to the bathroom. And the same thing applies when it involves this layer as well. So these ideas that have been popularized of never spilling your seed, I don't think are as healthy, especially when we're, again, just viewing it from a purely matter perspective and not bringing in the energetic intent or backing behind the practice and what we're doing it with. So that's what really makes the act sacred. It's not the physical nature itself.
Yeah, there are consequences when you go against nature, right? And so if you're not allowing the prostate to release a potent energy and you're backing it up constantly, you're creating a lot of congestion in that area. So think of the prostate as the root chakra, right? So the root chakra is much connected to the third eye. So over time, you will see a lot of imbalanced and unstable men who are unable to ground, and they're very airy, they're very flighty, because all of that energy is moving up to their pineal gland, moving up to the third eye, and creating that instability, clogging that space, just like the prostate, and not allowing them for there to tap into their divine masculinity of their internal navigation systems of intuition, revelation, and inspiration, right? So it can actually, although there are beautiful elements, we're not saying there's anything truly wrong with it, but when there is so much like it's like rigid and obsession that it must be this way, it must be this way, it must be this way, then you're not really going to be accessing what needs to actually happen. One, to support the body, and to allow the pineal gland to be free, so he can be free, or else it's going to turn him into a space of instability and then chasing that pleasure. And then think about almost like if he can't do it, how now him and the woman are going to be constantly disappointed. Oh, you failed at this, you're not a man. And like that whole rhetoric and dialogue can happen within his mind, especially if he has a lot of those matrix man tendencies already. So it can pour him into another loop of self-rejection. So it's just something really too important to consider. God is in nature. Every type of ancient Buddhist or Hinduism or any type of master that we've heard a quote from, they're always mimicking nature. They're always talking about the lotus. They're always talking about, I don't know, something about a mountain, right? Like they're always using nature as analogies. And it's because our body is also in working within that same capacity. So how can we be in harmony? Because when we're not in harmony, guess what? Chaos.
Absolutely. Cool. So the next question comes from Jade, and she said, I've always felt that we can go far and achieve a very optimal version of ourselves on our own. But I also know that we reach a point where only, she asked, a conscious partnership can take us to the next level. Now that you've been on this divine journey together, what have you each been invited to work on? What potentially has appeared that was out of your awareness or thought you were done with? And how have you navigated this journey together?
Love this question. It's a very deep question without you actually thinking it's very deep or not. So I'm going to start with understanding what creates or what destroys relationships. It's trauma. It's those trauma-based identities, those trauma-based entities that are in us that actually come through specific portals. And what are those portals? Those portals are fear. And humans only have two types of fears: the fear of loss or the fear that a toxic past is going to return. So if you have unhealed trauma and trauma entities, and behind the scenes, you are experiencing fear of loss, it's inevitable. Something is going to show up in a relationship. So we have this one understanding and concept, right? And this understanding of us on our own individual path. And then when it comes with being with someone, because being with someone is going to trigger karma. is going to trigger parts of ourselves that we came here to heal, to dissolve, and to complete, in addition to samsara type of impressions that are actually in our DNA. So when we have this understanding, we're going to go over to understanding the 4 different types of consciousnesses. We have below average consciousness, average consciousness, above average consciousness, and then beyond average consciousness. Jesus went to the wilderness to face the devil. And what does that metaphysically represent? What is that? What do they call the little stories? They're like fables, parables. What is that parable? Jesus went and actually went to sit with his trauma. He went to sit with the entities. He went to sit with the devil. Jesus went after the trauma and said, listen, as a beyond average consciousness, I'm going to say, you know what? I know you're there. I'm coming to get you. I'm going to face it and I'm going to dissolve it. The majority of people, when they go into relationships, they run within a category of, I'm going to wait until I get triggered and then we're going to work on it. Or I'm going to call it out and I'm going to do something about it. So Justin and I both were operating within that second category, right? So I've been calling out my trauma and dissolving it for quite some time now. And Justin is also on that type of path. So when we can actually come together, we recognize if there is a fear coming in, we know exactly what trauma it is, and that it's something that we need to actually take radical responsibility as a beyond average consciousness to dissolve on our own. We've also done practices where, since the fear of loss is so big, people will be married for 50 years. And in the back of their mind, even on the altar on their wedding day, they're worried about the day they're going to lose their partner. They're going to lose their husband or their wife, right? And that's a ghost that will haunt you forever. But what Justin and I had done is we literally faced each other and sat there, and I put like my legs around his, and we just said, I'm okay if I lose you. I'm okay if I lose you. It is highly likely that one day there will be a time where we will lose one another. And it's rather paradoxical, because when we give up the need to keep it, when we give up and dissolve the fear of loss, we actually end up creating more, I don't want to say permanency, but the thing really wants to say, wasn't there like didn't Jesus say that on some level? There was like something that he said, there's a cup.
Well, those who die are the ones who truly live.
Yeah.
So in order to truly live, we have to be willing to die and
accept it.
And to come to this place of acceptance of death, which is the detachment. So the detachment from any idea, whether that's a relationship or possession or idea about myself or whatever. Anytime I'm attached to that as being permanent, then I will suffer.
Yeah.
And if I am willing to let that die, then, like she said, it's paradoxical, because it actually encourages it encourages the universe to align with you, so you get to keep those things. As soon as we start to have these fears of loss, then we're inviting an experience where that's going to happen.
Yeah. So it's understanding the fears, understanding the dissolving of that, and being like, you know what? I want to be beyond average. I want to evolve, and I'm going to go fetch and catch my trauma, face it, dissolve it, so I can be a clear vessel. Having had learned the lessons that I came here to learn in my karmic contracts, right? Having to show up fully as a divine feminine for my husband, and knowing when certain things are coming up, which is really not very likely, but we've had like one incident where it got pretty heavy. We had like some stuff go on financially, and the way that we were able to support each other, and the way that I was able to recognize certain parts of me, and then him to hold space, and for me to be able to walk away and face it, was just unbelievably powerful. I mean, I feel like what happened to us could have totally broken apart in any relationship, but because we fetch it, because we want to be in this evolved, beyond average state, we do it. And because we remember that we are that powerful. We can truly, even though they're in our nervous system and everything feels emotionally so real and somatically, we still are the primary right? The God in you, the highest self, is the primary healer. And when you recognize that and sit back into the throne of God, you can do it.
Yeah. So to switch that fear, the fear of whatever trigger, whatever trauma identity, switch that fear into excitement as an opportunity. I was like, oh, this is some layer of myself that I get to let go of if I face it. So if I courageously embrace it and go towards it instead of running away from it, the avoidant pattern that society conditions us with, if I embrace it and go towards it, then I'm moving closer to that space where that is no longer, that ghost is no longer in my system.
Yeah.
It's no longer haunting me. But if I run from it, I'm just perpetuating the pattern. And so whether you're in an individual space, this is beautiful to switch that fear to excitement, but especially in a relationship space, you know, to recognize that this being here is a beautiful mirror for me. She's going to show up the things that I might not be able to see. She's going to give me insight into those layers that might not have been as clear if I were just on my own. So instead of giving in to the triggers when it's not always the easiest things to hear in the moments, but to really take a pause and take a breath, take 3, take 9 if you need to, whatever you need to let those triggers sort of pass, let the emotional response move through, and then say, okay, something just came up here, and I have someone who loves me that's willing to hold that mirror up and say, hey, let's work through this. So that's the beautiful gift that a relationship can really be and offer. And truly the divine design of a relationship is to have us have an accelerant of facing these demons within us so that I can move through them faster and I can come to a better space of wholeness and clarity within myself. So that's been the biggest takeaway, is just having, someone who's so engaged in that same process and willingness, and the willingness to, really embrace that. It's quite beautiful when it happens. And of course, the learning process, there's always there's always more layers that we can dissolve, and that's okay. That's part of the great mystery of this experience, is to have other aspects of ourselves that we can step further into. And when we're always engaging in that excited, sort of courageous way, then the monsters, the shadows, the trauma identities, they never gain power and sneak up on us, because anytime we catch a whiff of them, we're like, oh, okay, what's that? Let me pull out the magnifying glass, shine the light on it, and let's work through it, instead of running away from it and perpetuating it.
Yeah, it's funny because even yesterday I noticed more of this false identity come up, and I'll talk to Justin about it, and it's some of it's really intimate, right? But it's like, it's not me. So like whenever I share it with Justin, I don't ever feel like he's judging me or I'm judging myself, because again, I know it's not me. And so it's even more fun to kind of call it out in that capacity, because you're not holding and giving it any more power anymore. Listen, there's a part of me that's like noticing a competitiveness, right? And you're like, God, that's so silly. Like, why the hell would God even try to compete with anything, right? So you kind of see the ridiculousness of it when you start to dissolve and you start to back away. Again, the somatics of it feel so real, but there is that observer within. There is that part of you that can truly back away, like that mountain analogy, right? Like the closer you are to it, the bigger it is, but the more you back up, you move away from it, you see it's really not as big. So
Yep, exactly. All right, cool. Well, we'll move to the next question. And this one was from Liz. And she asked, so my question is about life architecture. I understand the importance of the inner work that prepares us for conscious union, but I'm looking for the implementation. How do we intentionally build the architecture of our next chapter while we're still living inside the previous one? What practical shifts help us stop organizing our lives around survival and instead create space for God, purpose, meaningful work, family, and healthy love? How do I faithfully build tomorrow without abandoning the responsibilities and obligations of today? So this is a really deep one, and there's a lot to unpack here. So I'm going to do my best kind of going through this, But if you and I'm not picking on you at all, Liz, but in the framing of this question, it really it's clear that there's a conditioned reality, and I need to address these conditions in order to have this. And every time I place these conditions that I need to do X before achieving Y, then I'm always living in a prison. This is a false construct built by my false identity that I need to have this or I need to be that. So the needs are really the foundational issue that has to be dissolved in order for that to even begin to happen. So the need to, like even in the first question, how do we intentionally build the architecture of our next chapter? Or no, sorry, I'm looking, yeah. So I understand the importance of the inner work that prepares us for conscious union, but I'm looking for implementation. So in that, to say that the inner work is needed in order for conscious union to come into my life. So I need to do inner work in order for the conscious union to arrive. So this is a false dichotomy that our mind, and again, not picking on you at all, because this is the way the society trains us. This is this
Very mainstream.
Yeah, like in order to get rid of, everything's all about getting rid of the problems, but there's no solutions in just getting rid of the problems. We're always focusing on, I have to get rid of this in order to have my solution. But how about reframing ourselves back to who we really are, which is we're God in the flesh, and we have no needs. We have nothing that we have to be in order to get anything. So if I'm building my reality off of the need that I have to do this in order to get that, then this is where Jesus was talking about. This is another layer of this building your house on the sand. I can keep building my house, more floors and more wings and more spaces off of that house that's built on the sand, but ultimately it's built on nothing. It's built on a false reality. It's built on my ego's reverberations that have put me into this box, this prison. And that's really what we're here to do. That's the Christ salvation, is to recognize that our personal self, our inner child, or however you want to frame that, is the thing that needs salvation, and you are the Christ that's here to redeem that. So to truly take on and wear that role as the Christ that has no needs, it has no wants, it has nothing, no conditions that it needs to be in. It is its fullest and highest. And then this is what allows the clarity to come to see, okay, here's how I can move through these things, to dissolve whatever needs to happen in order to get to that space. But it may seem subtle, but it's so tricky to unwind, or it can be, if we're still reframing from this, I need to do this in order to get Y. I need to do X in order to get Y. So yeah, that's what I would say as the first and foremost, is just to dissolve. We could go through the questions, and I'd invite you to go through the questions and just say, okay, what needs do I have in here? What needs am I trying to get in order to get something? Even the need for enlightenment or personal growth or any of these things, these are needs, because God has no need for personal growth or enlightenment. Enlightenment is just the state of that we are when we dissolve all these ideas. So it's that's what I would say initially. And but I do really appreciate the question. And this is something that, it's challenging to go too deep into in a sort of public forum in a space like this, because sometimes getting into the nuances or where these things kind of came up and all of that does take a little bit more intention and more dedicated space for that. But generally, that's what I would say initially, to just sort of highlight the sort of first thing that I saw within that.
Yeah, well said. Well said. And really great question. And what a beautiful opportunity to expose kind of what's happening on a psychological level. So it's almost like the needs are looking for an architecture to build the prison, because where there is a need, there's a prison. So these needs are asking for this architecture for you to insert yourself into, right? So that you can go from point A to point B. But it's almost like, how would I say this? I want peace. Therefore, I'm going to eradicate anxiety so I can have peace. Well, now you're creating a direct relationship with the anxiety itself. So rather it would be, I want to create peace, or I want to get rid of anxiety. So I'm going to do more things that create more peace in my life. Now you're having an interaction, you're having intercourse with peace. And then as you start to do those things, the peace will immediately dissolve the anxiety. So that's just a more of a practical kind of a sample example that I can give you. And one of the things that I work through with my clients is understanding how society has conditioned us to be someone, to be somebody, to be able to take up space in the world, to be able to have a title, to be able to have a platform to speak upon, to have authority of some level. Because if you're not someone, then you don't have authority, right? And this is like the conditioning. That's not what I'm saying is true. And so the process of dissolving these needs to be someone and somebody. The someone is an internal expression and an experience, and the somebody is how you're actually externally being, the self-image of how you're actually being seen from the external world. So we dissolve these needs of someone and somebody to get to the nobody, everything that Justin was just talking about, right? Get into that fertile space of when there are no needs, you become a magnet to everything that you desire, because there's none of that resistance energy, and there's no actual dark entity living within you to sabotage your destiny, right? And it's from the dissolution and becoming nobody that you enter into more clarity. Clarity opens and blossoms from that is freedom. And from freedom is where we can begin to activate the 7 houses of the Kundalini, the staff, the rising of our higher levels of consciousness, so we can get to the unconditional love in the God space. So it's just this really beautiful journey of, just noticing. Like, I remember when I was really dissolving my needs, and I'll end after this, and I had more space in my mind, and I feel so radiant and just appreciating a leaf and like a bird singing song or whatever. And I would feel something all of a sudden. It would say, oh, you need to get on social media. Oh, you need to be sure that people are still liking your content. You got to still be sure that you're getting followers so people can think that you're somebody. And I'll be like, and I'll take a breath. Do I need followers? No. Does God need followers? No. Do I need likes to prove that I am anything other than what I know I am naturally? No. Like, it just, like, I start to notice the silliness, like, laugh at it. Like, this isn't something to take so seriously. And again, it feels serious, but it's just, at the end of the day, you move away from that mountain. It actually becomes this silly, dark trick. And it's like, you didn't fool me on this dark trick, but you can start feeling the energy. Even your heart starts to palpitate. Even you kind of like feel all of a sudden you need to get in a rush and I need to go on a faster walk. It's like, no, I'm going to stay here because I tell my body what to do. I consciously, if you are actually wanting to tell your body to go right, if you want to go right and your body tells you to go left and you go left, you're in a prison. That's not truly having that consciousness, sovereignty available to actually move out of the survival brain and into the divine space. So,
yeah, which again is why Jesus talked about we must die in order to truly live. Because if our life given to us, or our false life given to us by society, traumatizing us from the moment we've come into this space, creating these identities that we have taken on, we have responsibility to release them. We've taken them on, but that layer of self has to die in order for that release to occur, to dissolve the survival brain's constant control over our system. Because if every decision is based off the survival brain, then we're just always going to be in that loop of misery and fear and yeah, it's a terrible space to live, but it's the perfect way to create a slave. When you create somebody who's locked into the survival brain and they are so identified with it that they think it's actually them, that's the perfect slave. Totally. And that's what we've been conditioned into. And so the true sovereign is to dissolve that self, to let that self die, so that we can come back to our true essence as the Christ, as the one who has no needs.
Because you don't need to implement anything.
Mm-hmm. No.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, it to go into more specifics within that, it would take a bit more work within that. But as far as the foundation to really address that as the way that you're viewing these things, that's the first step. And regardless of what you do with that, when you start dissolving these needs, the divine's going to bring you the answers that you need. The divine's going to bring you
Clarity.
to this space, the clarity that you need to see this and move through it. But you will never find it if you're going down this dead end path built on a house that's built on sand. It will not go any further than just more dead ends. So yeah, really fantastic question. I really appreciate the question too, because it's something that, Jen and I have both worked through within ourselves, and so many others go through this process as well, and live and die and never realize this reality and this whole thing that's been hidden from us, and as I mentioned, by design, because when we discover this, then we can no longer be controlled. So yeah, really fantastic question. So anyway, that was the end of the 4 questions that we got today. So we have just a little bit of time. If anyone has any questions or comments or things they want to share before we wrap up today, I'd be happy to go over any others. All the mics are open, so if you have anything, just feel free to jump in.
Hey, Jenna and Justin. Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Hey, Flora.
Yeah, I'm just curious to hear about, because I also feel it is important to listen to our body and to follow the signals our bodies are sending us. So if you could just, talk about that for a bit, how we can maybe differentiate if what our body is signaling us is something we should follow or not. Like, was that understandable?
Totally. Yeah, you want to start?
Yeah. So I totally agree with you, right? The body definitely can send some signals. It can actually even experience something that could be happening in the future and kind of start giving you a little bit of a warning. The body can be very, very psychic. So it's being able to establish the difference between is it a trauma type of physical response? Because remember, trauma is a neural network that lives throughout the major neural network energy centers of the body, which is the minds, the heart, and the gut. So the best way to really understand if this is more of a pure type of indication to move away from a situation or to not jump into something is to understand if there's a need behind it, right? Like sometimes, like let's say I'm feeling betrayal, or let me say like I'm noticing a really good friend of mine isn't returning a favor and I'm kind of getting a little mad, and I use my body as a way to think, okay, well, I just really can't trust this person and this isn't blah, blah, blah. But then it's like taking back, it's like, wait, am I putting an expectation on this person? Right? Like, and from a personal experience, I have a friend, and she meets me where she's at anytime that she can. And I've noticed that there's certain behaviors that she has where if I had a need, there's no way that she would even be a friend. I would just like call it out from trauma and be like, I can't trust that person. But because I don't, I allow her to fully enter into my life. And from that place, be able to establish whether or not I want to continue to pour a lot of energy into this person or not. Does that kind of make sense? It's not coming from, I have an expectation on a sister because that status of the name friend or sister come with these bullet points, criteria of how they're supposed to behave. And I'm attaching that onto her. And if she's not filling the criteria, then that can be another indication of it coming from a need and coming from and that type of expectation. But when we don't have those needs from people, we allow them to be free so you can be free. Then you actually become more of a vessel because you don't have those entities clogged in the major houses of your nervous system that might be trying to tell you to run the other way because of danger. Because again, one of the biggest fears is that a toxic past will return. So just really having that, a stronger, more sensitive barometer of, is this a status type of expectation or is this a need? And then if you can kind of feel that and you don't feel like they're either, then that's when true discernment can really shine through you from a clean space. I don't know if you have anything to say.
Yeah, well said. And just to add on to that, I mean, the body can be easily hijacked. So it's, while the body is incredibly intelligent, if we're coming from our false identity, where we were identified with these traumas, then the bodily signals can become coming from things that are false, are
Not
false.
real.
And so it's hard to go, there's not I couldn't go through every single example and say, okay, this is where you should and shouldn't do this kind of thing. It really has to come down to the individual's process and their awareness and moving through and dissolving these things. So, you take, for example, like a man crafted by the Matrix to be designed to be very lustful, fed pornography and all these things throughout life, fed this particular image. Well, his body has been hijacked. So he might have bodily signals that says, oh, I want to go sleep with that woman, or for heaven forbid, rape her. Like there are ways that that's going to push him from a bodily perspective to doing these kind of things.
There's also a need in there too.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
I need this to make me feel better.
Right. Exactly. So this is the reclaiming of the body and moving it away from these needs that have been conditioned into us by the external circumstances, and coming back to the truth, which is that you have no needs. And so from that, it helps to distinguish other factors. We can look at food cravings and things of that nature, and we look at parasites as other layers of physical representations of needs. So whether it's a mental parasite or a physical parasite, these are the same sort of things that can hijack and take over our nervous system and our ability to discern and see these things clearly. But dissolving those is the way to reclaim that and have clear vision on, okay, am I going to listen to the body in this particular signal that it's giving me right now, or is there some layer of my false identity that needs to be dissolved? So it's a really great question.
Yeah, really good question.
Yeah, did you have any more comments on that, Flora? I think we'll go ahead and close out after this one.
No, thank you. Yeah, that makes it clear.
Good.
Awesome. Sweet. Well, that's about all the time we have today. So again, just really appreciate all the great questions that we've received, and would love to invite any others in the chat. So you'll see the link if you're not already in the group. I'll put the link in the description wherever we post this. And yeah, feel free to relay any questions there, just anything related to our personal self, our personal evolution, and then our relationships, which is a very wide topic because there's lots of things to talk about within that. So feel free to relay any other questions in the chat, and
yeah,
we'll keep on doing these. We're going to have lots more fun stuff coming up, and stay tuned for more exciting things on the horizon, as far as like we do want to go much more intimately into a lot of these categories and have more dedicated time to speak on things that might be a little too taboo for YouTube or wherever else. So stay tuned for a maybe a more curated container to go deeper with those who are really wanting to do that. But yeah, we'll keep on doing this. And did you have any other closing comments before we end today?
No, we're here for you. We're happy to be here.
Yeah.
And thank you for stopping by and getting close with us. That's all we want, is just to connect and to be together.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Sending love, and we'll talk to you next time.
Bye.
Bye.